The rain has been falling since you woke up. You didn't have a watch, so you aren't sure how many hours. It hasn't stopped. It seems as though the sky is weeping fine. Gray tears onto the mud and grime of Paris. The baker where you get your morning bread, he tells you that Marie Antoinette was beheaded last night. But you really already knew that. You heard the rumble of the crowd returning home last evening, their voices hoarse with shouting. So when you went out into the street, you already knew what the paper posters would say. Even before you could read the spidery script and chipped woodblock images, you knew who had been arrested. You knew that another shop would be boarded up today, knew that the price of bread would rise again. The greengrocer looks at you like you're made of gold. He doesn't want your money, he wants your grain. This isn't the first time you've been hungry these past few years, but there are nights when the gnawing in your belly is worse than others. You pull your threadbare coat tighter around you. For now, you have enough wrapped tightly in your scarf. Perhaps you can eat later if you don't need the money. If no one offers you a coin for helping carry a bucket of water or mending shoes by the light of a candle, maybe tonight there will be a bit more food at the soup kitchen. Maybe you won't hear the screams in the night anymore. A new calendar hangs crookedly in the butcher's window. The days of the week have new names, and the old saints have been erased from the squares. No more saints, the shopkeeper said last week. They are taking the kings away too. Some people cheered that. But you think of the king's daughter, the little princess who used to ride past in her carriage, holding a bunch of carrots, waving at the children. Have they taken her away, too? Your daughter is the same age as the princess. She used to love those carrots. No, there are no more carrots. And then there's the theater. There is always the theater. The lights flicker on as dusk begins to settle over the city. You sit in the rough wooden chair, and the air grows warm as the crowd settles. The play is about Rome, about ancient Rome. How much do you remember of the Roman plays? Caesar was killed, stabbed by a friend in the Senate. That's what happens in the play. A friend betrays him. You think of the former queen. Was she betrayed by the king? By her brother, the emperor? No. Or was she simply caught in the gears of a machine that ground people up? All those grand ladies and gentlemen, the aristocrats, the nobility, the royals, none of them know how to fix the roads or the canals, or make the wheat grow taller and fuller. They don't know anything except for collecting pretty things and making war. What good did they ever do? There are some books left at the shop. Not many, but a few. You wonder who will read them, who will want to read them. The stories of Troy or Greece or Egypt or Rome. Will anyone care about the tales of faraway lands when there is no bread in the markets of Paris? When the fountain in the square is filled with dead bodies? When you walk past the same buildings every day, yet inside they are hiding different horrors every day? Who wants to hear about kings and queens and wars across the sea? There are revolutionaries in Paris, here in Paris, and they have their own drama playing out. You turn off the gas lamps and light your candle and curl up on your cot under your blanket. The room is small and dark. There are 3 other men in here, and you try not to look at them. Each man holds his own pain, his own story in his eyes. Do any of them dream of chariots thundering across green fields or ships sailing full of gold? Do they dream of adventure and faraway places? Or do they only dream of bread and water? Do you only dream of bread and water? Do you go out into the street? The cobblestones are slick and greasy under your worn leather shoes. The wind is growing colder. Soon it will snow. You wrap your scarf tighter around your face. The wind steals up your coat, biting at your skin. In the pale lamplight, you see the paintings on the walls, the slogans daubed on the houses, and the shutters, vive la pupille. You remember when those pictures were new? When the words were splashed on the wall in bright, defiant colors? You remember when people walked past and pointed and shouted vive la pupille, and you joined in because you were scared not to, because if you weren't with them, then you were against them, and you might end up in the square with the other ones, the ones who lost the game of human chess they were playing. You remember when there were 2 of them, the Girondins and the Jacobin? They argued and shouted and stabbed each other's pictures with their swords. Now, there are no more Girondins. At least you haven't seen one for a while. You haven't even seen an argument in the street for weeks. Everyone goes about their business, head down, trying to stay out of the way, trying to be invisible. It's safer that way. You heard a rumor in the bakery today. You're going to take the young girls next, the ones who are pretty. Pretty girls are in danger now. Pretty girls are taken away. What will they take from you? You have nothing of value. They have taken everything. They have taken your dignity, your peace of mind, your food, your hope. All they have left to take is your life. They'll do that when they decide they want to. When you get home, you untie your boots and pull off your coat. You hang them by the door, along with the axe that was given to you to defend yourself. Did you ever use it? Did you ever strike anyone with the axe? You don't remember? Maybe it all feels like a dream, a bad dream that will soon be over? Maybe tomorrow you will wake up in a field of wheat, golden and tall, stretching as far as you can see, and the sun will be warm on your face, and there will be bread in the markets, and the people will smile when they see you. You climb into bed and pull the blanket up to your chin. Your pillow is hard and cold. You close your eyes. Can you hear it? Can you hear the drumming in the distance? The muffled beat of drums echoes through the empty streets of Paris. Can you hear it? The rhythm is slow and heavy. The drums have been silent for so long. Are they calling the men back to fight? Are they calling up the reserves to put down another rebellion? To crush another uprising? To make sure that the terror never ends? Or are they calling on the fallen, the dead, to rise up and march again? You wonder what dreams the drummer boy is having? Does he dream of the fields of battle? Of the drums that beat and beat and beat, the blood that stains the cobblestones and the sand? Or does he dream of bread and water? Tonight you will have a nightmare. You always do. You always have. You'll scream out in your sleep, but no one will hear you. No one ever does. You will run through the streets, the cobbles turning to mud under your feet. You will outrun the shadows, the faceless men with the red caps. You will outrun the guillotine, its blade glinting in the moonlight. You will outrun the dogs, their tongues lolling, their teeth bared in a silent snarl. You will outrun the ghost of the king, his eyes wide and accusing. You will outrun all of them, and when you wake, you will be alone. In the morning, you will wake and be alone. The rain will still be falling, and the cobblestones will be wet. The wind will bite at your face, and you will pull your coat tighter around you. The shops will be closed, so the markets will be empty. The streets will be silent. The only sound will be the rain, and you will walk on, and the rain will fall. The French Revolution wasn't exactly a picnic, was it? So why would you want to live through it? Well, let's just say there were perks. Let me tell you about them right now. You want to live through the French Revolution? Well, what makes you think you could survive the French Revolution? This ain't no tea party, my friend. This is a time when men will die for wearing the wrong color ribbon in their lapel. You need to be on your toes. You need to be ready to sacrifice. Oh, and probably best not to wear any silk or lace, really. You don't want to catch the eye of Robespierre. And look, I know we all love us some historical romance novels, but times were rough. If you were alive during the French Revolution, odds are good, you'd smell bad most of the time. First off, perfumes weren't invented yet, so chances are, you'd just smell like the things you did for work. But also, just like today, there were people whose jobs it was to make sure everyone else smelled bad. I'm talking professional provocateurs. Back then, they were known as lopetons. These folks made money by throwing things on the ground and then running away, laughing hysterically while everyone else tried to figure out who had thrown said thing, and then proceeded to beat them up. Also, people didn't really bathe. I mean, I don't blame them because water was both precious and gross. The sewage system in Paris, such as it was, emptied straight into the Seine, which everyone used for everything. Drinking, washing, cleaning, swimming, you name it. Even the king did. Louis XVI famously enjoyed a nice dip in his open-air bath on the palace roof. When Marie Antoinette tried to stop him from doing this by pointing out that everyone could see him, he just replied, "Well, let them come. I'm sure they won't mind." So yeah, baths were a dicey proposition at best. Now you might be saying, hey, baths are overrated anyway. About some nice fresh air. And to that I would say, enjoy your trip to the doctor, because there were tons of diseases going around. Cholera, typhoid, smallpox, scarlet fever, and nobody knew how to deal with any of them. Doctors wore masks, but those were mostly just for show. In reality, the only thing they could do was bleed you, and that never really helped. But the biggest killer of all was probably just being born. Child mortality was sky high. Half of all children died before the age of 5. Most died of something called marasmus. Basically, their guts rotted out because they weren't getting proper nutrition. I'm sorry to put it this way, but if you have kids, you should probably kill them. Sorry. Okay, so you're thinking maybe the American colonies are more your speed. Nope. Sorry, the yellow fever was raging there too. In fact, it killed off around 25% of the population of Philadelphia in 1793. Even if you avoided all that, though, you wouldn't avoid the thing that killed the most people in the era war. Look, pandemics can suck it. Wars are just awful. During the American Revolutionary War, which lasted from 1775 to 1783, an estimated 25,000 soldiers died. And yes, okay, most of them died of disease, but 6,000 still died violent deaths. France had a bunch of wars going on at the same time. If you were in Paris, you got sucked into that vortex of violence too. The storming of the Bastille happened in 1789. By 1793, the city was in full-on anarchy. Shops were looted. People went unpunished for stealing. Riots and rebellions were happening every other day. And then there was the terror from 1793 to 1794. When Robespierre and the Committee for Public Safety started executing people left, right, and center, it was a time of paranoia. People suspected everyone around them of being enemies of the revolution. The guillotine was out almost every day, chopping heads. People were arrested for saying the wrong thing, looking at the king funny, or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. So if you survived the war, chances are you got bumped off by Robespierre. But even if you made it through all that, you might want to hold on to your head because there was a civil war between royalists and Jacobin going on. The worst part is, it's hard to stay out of it. Can't walk down the street without tripping over a political argument. There were fights everywhere, and it was hard to go anywhere without someone trying to drag you into one. Okay, so the best option is to leave town, right? Wrong. It was dangerous to leave Paris too. See, the revolutionary fervor was a national thing. It wasn't limited to the capital. So no matter where you went, you ran the risk of running afoul of a band of revolutionaries eager to punish you for trying to leave their domain. Plus, the roads were full of bandits, brigands, soldiers, refugees. The entire country was descending into chaos. Any road you chose to travel was probably going to be a bad one, so no matter where you went, you got attacked. And finally, let's say you made it somewhere safe. Somewhere far away from the terror and the civil war and the plague and the guillotine. You could always just stay indoors. Nothing ever happens at home, right? Well, you'd be wrong. There were riots in Paris, but other parts of the country had their own problems. Remember those bands of angry guys who wanted to punish you for leaving? Yeah, they were going to find you eventually. And even if they didn't, you couldn't escape the politics. Even at home, people were arguing over the revolution all the time. They were taking sides, writing pamphlets, posting stuff on walls, holding meetings, and the debates were heating up. You'd barely have time to eat your bread when suddenly a fight broke out next door. You might be able to ignore it if you lived in the countryside, but in the city, the arguments spilled out onto the street and dragged you right into them. Once again, you got pulled into a riot or worse. But let's say you managed to weather all those storms. Can you at least enjoy the calm after? Well, no. Because even the quiet moments of the French Revolution were fraught with danger. If you thought being a wallflower at a party was tough, try being a wallflower during the French Revolution. Everyone's watching you. Everyone's judging you. You can't afford to be neutral. Every gesture, word, or action was taken as evidence of your loyalty to the crown or the revolution. If you looked at a painting of the Virgin Mary, you were a royalist. If you praised Marat, you were a Jacobin. If you laughed too loud, you were frivolously spending your time. If you walked too slow, you were lazy. If you walked too fast, you were arrogant. If you complained about being hungry, you were ungrateful. If you didn't complain about being hungry, you were indifferent. It was a lose-lose situation, and everyone knew it. If you'd spent any time in Paris during the revolution, you'd long ago learned to read the signs and change your tune based on who was watching. But if you weren't careful, you could accidentally insult someone who took offense to something you didn't mean. If that happened, you could be pretty sure you were next in line for the guillotine. Even if you managed to avoid offending anyone, you were probably too busy worrying about being arrested for counter-revolution. The revolution was not kind to many groups of people, especially not former aristocrats and clergy. If you were a member of either of those groups, you got special attention from the revolutionaries. That meant that if you were a member of the nobility, you got arrested, tortured, and killed faster than everyone else. So even if you weren't doing anything wrong, the mere fact of your birth could get you in trouble. In the end, unless you were weirdly good at hiding, odds are you weren't going to make it through the French Revolution unscathed. So let's just be grateful you didn't live then, huh? In the heart of Paris, hidden behind the bustling throngs of tourists and nestled beside the Seine, there is a place called the Conciergerie. And in its depths, a chill wind whistles through the halls. carrying stories of a time when this fortress was not a museum, but a prison. Within these cold stones, there are tales of survival, revolution, and despair. Nowhere is this more evident than in the room known as the Temple de Glace, the ice room, where a famous prisoner awaited her fate. This is the story of Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France. Bonjour, mes amis. Today we will explore the fascinating history of Marie Antoinette and her time spent in the Palace of the Legion, including her imprisonment in the Temple de Glace. Marie Antoinette was born in Vienna on November 2nd, 1755. From birth, her life was a blend of privilege and duty. The 15th child of Empress Maria Theresa of Austria, her early years were a whirlwind of royal pageantry. Imagine a world without Google or Netflix, where your only entertainment came from elaborate ballets and candlelit. Her childhood was filled with these events, surrounded by her large family and an even larger staff. Marie Antoinette's world was one of silk and satin, where her every move was dictated by decorum and custom. Her days were a tapestry of lessons, from the expected curtsies to the proper way to hold a fan. One might think that such a life would breed arrogance, yet young Marie Antoinette was far from it. At least initially, her letters reveal a playful, sensitive girl who dreamed of love and a simpler life. However, her idyllic childhood was soon to be overshadowed by the looming threat of war. At age 14, she was betrothed to the future Louis XVI of France, a strategic alliance between two royal houses. Can you imagine leaving everything familiar behind at age 14 to marry a king you have never met? This was not merely a marriage, but a political union that joined Austria and France in an era when diplomacy often took precedence over individual happiness. Her arrival in France was like stepping into a fairy tale. Horse-drawn carriages, crowds cheering, music filling the air. But beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to show. Her new home, the Palace of Versailles, was a microcosm of the French nobility, riddled with rivalries and jealousies. Picture yourself in a grand ballroom where the walls are adorned with gold leaf, and each guest is locked in a silent battle of status. This was the world of Versailles. Marie Antoinette was not merely a queen-to-be. She was a pawn in a game of thrones. Her entrance into French society was marked by elaborate ceremonies, each step meticulously planned, each gesture laden with meaning. There were the infamous sure-moving ceremonies, where her attendants would kneel and remove her shoes, and even the well-documented affair with the diamond necklace. But despite the pageantry, she yearned for something real. A desire that led her to create her own private sanctuary, the Queen's Hamlet. Imagine an oasis, away from the prying eyes of Versailles, a place with winding paths, quaint cottages, and laughter echoing through the trees. This was the Queen's Hamlet, a world away from the gilded cage of the palace. But even here, shadows lurked. The growing discontent of the French people seeped into her haven. How can one escape the rumblings of revolution when the walls themselves are trembling? As the financial strain on France grew, so did the whispers about her. She spends too much, they said. She mocks the people. And with that, her world began to crumble. The storming of the Bastille, the king's flight to Varennes, the return to Paris, every event pushed them closer to the edge. The diamond necklace affair tarnished her reputation. And with that, the whispers turned to screams. The royal family was now prisoners in their own palace, queen and king attempting to flee, only to be recognized by a peasant girl who shouted, "Treason!" Louis, once revered as the Sun King, was seen as out of touch. And Marie Antoinette, with her Austrian roots, was branded a foreigner. Accusations flew like daggers, piercing the armor of their power. "Let them eat cake," she was said to have remarked, though this story, like many, is likely apocryphal. But whether true or false, it became a symbol of her disconnect from the commoners. Her children, the future Louis XVII and Marie Therese, became bargaining chips in a game where no one emerged unscathed. The flight to Varennes irreparably damaged their standing. And when the king returned, he was forced to swear allegiance to the nation. Overnight, their lives went from privilege to peril. The royal family's fall was swift and brutal. The National Assembly abolished feudalism, confiscated church lands, and limited the king's authority. Soon, the mob was baying for their blood. The Tuileries Palace became a besieged fortress, and the king and queen, hostages in their own right. Then came the fateful day when the revolutionaries stormed the Tuileries, forcing the royals to flee for safety to the Legislative Assembly. But even here they were not safe. The Assembly voted to suspend the monarchy, and the king and queen were arrested, separated, and their fate hung in the balance. Louis was sent to the Temple, a fortress turned prison, while Marie Antoinette was sent to the Conciergerie, a grim stone structure that once served as a royal residence, but was now a symbol of confinement. The Conciergerie's stark hallways and damp cells were not fit for a queen, yet that is where she was sent. The ice room was one of the few places where she could find some semblance of privacy. Imagine a room with bare stone walls and barred windows where the only sound is the drip of water. It was here that she awaited her fate, cut off from the world, save for the murmurs that reached her through the thick stone walls. Contrast this with her former life, the luxurious chambers of the palace, the murmur of admirers, the rustle of silk gowns. The change was nothing short of dramatic, yet even in this stark chamber, the queen's spirit did not break. She continued writing letters, pouring her heart out onto paper, hoping that one day they would reach her loved ones. These letters are our window into her soul, revealing a woman far different from the caricature painted by the revolutionaries. We see a wife devoted to her king, a mother desperate to protect her children, and a human being stripped of her dignity, reduced to a number, just another prisoner. The trial was swift and brutal, lasting only 3 days. The charges: treason, conspiracy, and immorality. The evidence, largely circumstantial, was enough to condemn her. The queen, once the epitome of grace and elegance, was now a figure of derision, the crowd chanting away with her, drowning out her pleas of innocence. On October 16, 1793, she walked down the cobblestone streets of Paris towards the Place de la Da. The same streets that had once cheered her arrival were now silent. The crowd parted, creating a lane for the procession that led to her doom. As she approached the scaffold, the priest offered her absolution. Taking a deep breath, she removed her white cap, revealing a red Phrygian cap, a symbol of the revolution. This was a deliberate choice, a final act of defiance. She ascended the stairs slowly, her steps echoing in the stunned silence. As she placed her head on the block, a witness wrote, "She looked like an angel, or rather, she inspired the idea of an angel." The blade fell, ending not just her life, but a way of life. The monarchy was dead, and with it, an era came to a close. And there you have it, the remarkable story of Marie Antoinette, from the grandeur of the Queen's Hamlet to the chilling confines of the ice room. I invite you to visit the Conciergerie and imagine the icy grip of fate on that fateful day in October. Feel the chill of the Temple de Glace and listen to the echoes of her footsteps on the stairs to the scaffold. What do you admire most about Marie Antoinette's story? Do you think she was a tragic victim of circumstance or a symbol of an out-off-touch monarchy? Share your thoughts below. Come with me now, dear viewer, on a whirlwind tour through the palaces of Paris, where royalty reigned and revolution brewed, where the Sun King's grand heirs lived large, yet whose downfall would prove oh so gargantuan. Here we are, the stately palace of Versailles, where the Bourbon dynasty held court and excess was the order of the day. Come inside and breathe in the scent of stale perfume and powdered wig. Marvel at the gilded mirrors and let your eyes pop at the opulence surrounding you. If these four walls could talk, dear viewer, they would surely gossip about the foibles and fancies of their royal habit. Eavesdrop as I do on conversations about the latest fashions, the perfect shade of rouge or the coif that turned heads. But all that glitters is not gold. Behind the fans and feathers, tensions rise. The people grumble outside these manicured walls. Whispers of discontent drift through the open windows, carried on the wind from the streets of Paris. Can you hear them? The people want change. They demand a voice, a vote, and perhaps a slice of that delicious gâteau sitting on the royal table. But you wouldn't be here for long, dear viewer, not after what happened next. Come with me as we exit Versailles, leaving behind the Sun King and his nearsighted heir, and step into the heart of Paris. Behold, the Tuileries Palace, home to Louis and Marie, where the royals lived when they weren't frolicking in the gardens of Versailles. Walk with me through the halls where royalty resided, where nobles plotted and power shifted like sand. Did you see that? Was that just a flicker of movement in the shadows? Perhaps just a mouse darting across the floorboards? Or could it be the ghost of the royal family, haunting the halls of their former home? Hear me out, dear viewer, as I recount their tale. Louis and Marie, the royal couple who once graced these halls, their fate sealed in a whirlwind of revolution and guillotines. Yes, you heard right, guillotines. Picture the scene, dear viewer, the Tuileries Palace under siege, the people storming in, demanding the royal family's head. How dramatic. And don't look away, because you won't believe what happened next. Follow me as we leave the Tuileries Palace behind, the scene of a royal massacre, and venture into the cold, dank halls of the Conciergerie, once a prison, but now a tomb for Marie Antoinette. Step inside and feel the weight of history pressing down on you. Did you notice that? A faint scent of lavender lingers in the air. Perhaps a phantom waft of the Queen's favorite perfume. Or could it be her spirit, forever trapped within these four walls? Glimpse the cells where she spent her final days, pacing, writing letters, saying her goodbyes. Can you hear her thoughts echoing through the centuries? Wondering about the strange, sharp blade that awaits her in the Place de la Concorde? As I gaze upon the spot where the Queen's head fell, I remember her iconic words. I have suffered too much. A sentiment that resonates even now, 2 centuries later. But our royal tours isn't over yet. There's more to see, more to uncover. So hold on to your powdered wigs, dear viewer, and join me as we take a ghostly stroll through the streets of Paris. First stop, the Petit Trianon, Marie's country retreat, where she found solace away from the Tuileries. Imagine the scene, dear viewer, a beautiful day in the park. Birds tweeting, flowers blooming, and Marie taking a leisurely stroll. But don't be fooled by this tranquil setting, for danger lurks around every corner. Ah, yes, the fateful walk to the Rose Garden, where royal nannies gossiped and traded secrets, where Marie found comfort in nature's embrace, unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. Now picture this, the Queen in flight, racing back to the Tuileries, the mob hot on her heels. Can you feel the pounding of her heart as she makes a mad dash for safety? Will she make it, or will the mob catch up and turn her dreams into dust? And finally, a chilling sight awaits us. The Place de la Concorde, where the guillotine stands tall, a grim reminder of the revolution's fury. Gaze upon the spot where the Queen met her demise, where the blade descended and ended her reign. And as we stand here, dear viewer, I want you to feel the tension, hear the crowds roar, and witness the end of an era. We have journeyed through the palaces of a bygone age, witnessed the drama of a nation in turmoil, and felt the chill of the guillotine's embrace. But now, my dear viewer, it's time to part ways. As the ghosts of royalty fade into the mists of time, I invite you to linger a while longer in these hallowed halls. Feel the echoes of their laughter and whispers in your own voice. Share your thoughts, your memories, and your hopes for the future. And if you find yourself returning to these digital shores, know that I'll be here, eager to guide you on new adventures through the bygone eras. Until then, keep exploring, keep dreaming, and remember, history is more than just dates and names. It's a living, breathing tapestry that invites you to touch its threads and make it your own. As the sun sets on another day, casting long shadows across the palaces of old, I invite you to join me one last time for a final adventure. Let's leave Paris behind, dear viewer, and venture into the murky depths of the revolutionary fervor that gripped France in the late 18th century. The year is 1792, and the people are restless. The monarchy seems distant, out of touch, and ripe for the picking. And what better way to make a statement than to target the very symbols of the regime? The National Assembly, formed by representatives of the people to voice their demands and protect their interests. A group driven by ideals of liberty, equality, and fraternity, who sought to reshape France into a republic where power lay in the hands of the citizens. But how does one fight an entrenched monarchy? With symbols, dear viewer, symbols that would send shockwaves through the nation and beyond. Picture this, the tennis court oath, sworn by the members of the National Assembly, vowing not to disband until a constitution was drafted, laying the groundwork for a new France. Or the storming of the Bastille. The storming of the Bastille. A pivotal moment when the people seized a key prison, symbolizing the fall of oppressive rule. But our story doesn't end there. For hidden beneath these momentous events lies a quieter, more insidious threat to the monarchy. It's September 1792, and the Girondins, A political faction within the growing movement face opposition. Enemies lurk around every corner, plotting, scheming, ready to strike. And with the monarchy on the decline, the Girondins need a way to rally support, to make their voices heard above the din of revolution. Their weapon of choice, pamphlets, but not just any pamphlets. My dear viewer, powerful, evocative missives that expose the excesses and abuses of the royal court. Think of them as the early modern equivalent of social media posts, whispered rumors, broadside ballads, and lurid engravings. They spread like wildfire, reaching far and wide, shaping public opinion and fanning the flames of discontent. And at the center of this maelstrom stood one man, the Marquis de Condorcet, prominent member of the Girondins and a prolific writer whose pen was as sharp as any sword. With each essay, pamphlet, and letter he penned, Condorcet chipped away at the monarchy's legitimacy, exposing the flaws of a system that had failed its people. His words electrified the masses, igniting their passions and fueling the fire of revolution. The stage was set, the players assembled. All that was left was for the drama to unfold. Join me, dear viewer, as we delve into the shadowy world of the French Revolution and uncover the hidden stories that shaped a nation. From the opulent palaces of Versailles to the dank depths of the conciergerie, we've journeyed through a world of grandeur and despair. But our adventure doesn't end here. There are more tales to tell, more mysteries to solve, and more history to bring to life. So stay tuned, dear viewer, and prepare to be whisked away on new adventures as we continue to explore the captivating narratives that have shaped our world. Ah, the French Revolution. Liberty, equality, fraternity, or just plain old bread and games. There's only one way to truly understand a revolution, though: eating your way through history. So grab your fork and let's dig in. First up, let's start with an appetizer. No, not that one. That's too gross. But let me take you back a bit further. To really understand the French Revolution, we need to go back a little further than the storming of the Bastille or Marat's infamous bathtub. Going back to the last days of the absolute monarchy, when the king was called the Sun King, when Versailles dripped with gold leaf, and where dinner parties lasted 5 hours. We're going to eat our way through the splendor of the ancien. Welcome to the channel. Join me, your royal glutton, as we devour our way through history, uncovering the feasts, failures, and fabulous food of the past. Tonight we dine with the Sun King and prepare for the final supper of the Ancien regime. It's the year 1674, and you are invited to a party hosted by the Sun King, Louis XIV. The reception begins at 4 p.m. in the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. You navigate a crowd of nobles, foreign ambassadors, and yes, the occasional peasant who snuck in by pretending to be a dog. By 6 p.m., everyone is seated for dinner. Louis, resplendent in gold brocade, sits center stage on the dais. From his place, he can see the entire hall, every courtier, every dish, every detail. His eye, they say, is keen as a hawk's. The hall itself is ablaze with candlelight flickering on gold leaf and marble columns. The ceiling is painted with cupids and mythological scenes. The air is thick with the scent of orange blossom and wood smoke from the great hearth. Music drifts from a quartet tucked away in the gallery. Tonight, 200 courtiers will be served by 300 servants. We'll tell you more about them later. Dinner begins with a procession of appetizers presented on silver platters by liveried footmen. There are dishes of pomegranates, candied citron, figs, and dates. One platter holds a sculpted pair of nightingales made from marzipan. King picks one up, peels off its sugared wings, and eats it with relish. Next comes a jelly molded in the shape of Neptune riding a seahorse. A sauce boat, in the form of Aphrodite, pours forth a saffron sauce. Next to it, lobster claws grip a basket of spun sugar. The king's poisson, d'avril, or April fish, arrive. These are salmon and pike shaped from rice dough, then poached in a rich broth, and grilled mutton, sliced wafer thin, and arranged on a silver dome. And finally, a magnificent boar roasted for 3 hours until it's glazed and crisp. Wild mushrooms and truffles adorn its back. The head is filled with pistachio ice cream. The king carves the boar, while the queen, Maria Theresa, watches him with amusement. She's already had her share of the finest meat, and is now indulging in a sweet. Her favorite dessert, the langue de chat or cat's tongue. Layers of puff pastry fill with vanilla cream. Once the boar is carved, it's time for the grand finale. Dessert trolley rolls forth laden with pastries, macarons, tarts, and pies. The king chooses an elaborate pie filled with plums and white mulberries. Queen Maria Theresa selects a tartlet filled with ice cream. She's spooning it out with a mother-of-pearl spoon. They smile at each other. The king looks out at his court, relaxed, secure. The music swells. There is laughter. There is talk of art and war. There is everything but dissent. Here at the heart of power, there is no sign of the coming storm. But let us be honest, the Sun King's dinners were not exactly revolutionary. So let's move forward a bit and get back to the French Revolution. Welcome back to Versailles, but this time we're dining a century later. The year is 1788, the setting the grand apartments in the Tuileries Palace. The guests are once again royalty. Queen Marie Antoinette and King Louis XVI are hosting a state dinner for visiting dignitaries. Everything here is designed to impress. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbows across white linen tablecloths. Heavy damask curtains are drawn back to reveal views of the manicured gardens. The walls are adorned with masterpieces from Boucher and Fragonard. And the guests, well, they are some of the most important people in Europe. There is the Austrian ambassador, the Dutch envoy, a representative from Sweden, and lesser nobles from across France. Some are loyal supporters of the crown. Others harbor resentment over the high taxes levied by the Sun King's successors. Still others are sympathetic to the plight of the commoners who are starving in the streets outside the palace. The king and queen glide through the receiving line, offering polite smiles and murmured greetings. Once the visitors are seated, the doors to the dining room are flung open, and the footmen enter carrying the first course. The food is beautiful, plated in fine porcelain, and served on 24-karat gold vermil. There is turtle soup, glazed quail, almond orange jelly, molded into the shape of a swan. As the meal progresses, the king falls silent, picking listlessly at his food. The queen, meanwhile, is animated and talkative. She engages in witty repartee with the Austrian ambassador, discussing the latest opera and the best wines from Burgundy. The visiting dignitaries listen politely, hiding their growing impatience. They came to discuss trade deals and alliance against the encroaching Ottoman Empire. But the queen wants to talk about fashion and flowers. As the dinner continues, a sense of unease settles over the room. The nobles whisper to each other, exchanging rumors about the queen's extravagant spending and the king's indecisiveness. They know that France is on the brink of revolution. They feel the anger of the commoners who are rising up against the privileged nobility. They hear the pamphlets being smuggled into the salons and the taverns, calling for liberty and equality. The queen's light chatter feels increasingly out of touch. The king's silence seems like a bad omen. The French Revolution is not a distant threat. It is a storm gathering on the horizon. Question is, will the royal family heed the warning? As the dinner concludes, the guests rise from their seats, murmuring their thanks to the king and queen. They exchange knowing glances. They are complicit in the drama unfolding around them. They are part of the story that is about to change the world. But as they leave the dining room, they take the secrets of the evening with them. They won't speak of the unease, the anger, the revolution that was brewing in the streets. They will keep quiet for fear of reprisals, for fear of losing their heads. And so the dinner at the Tuileries becomes the last supper of the anciens, a final flourish of extravagance before the storm breaks. The candlelight flickers on the empty table, the chairs are overturned, the linen is thrown to the floor, and outside, the guillotine awaits. And so, we come to the end of our suppers from history, to lavish meals from two very different eras, two opportunities to dine alongside royalty. The Sun King's dinners at Versailles were legendary events orchestrated to display wealth, power, and absolute control. The final supper of the anciens was a more intimate affair, loaded with symbolism and foreshadowing. In the end, both meals were doomed, both were followed by chaos, both ended in tragedy. What do you think? Would you rather dine with the Sun King or the Queen at the Tuileries? How would you describe the atmosphere of each meal? What might the future hold for the French royal family? Share your thoughts below. And thank you for joining me on this episode of A Feast of History. If you enjoyed our repass through time, please be sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell to stay notified for our next feast. Until then, remember, history is hungry, and we must feed it.